Bitterness. Well, let's think of first of all what is bitterness when you taste bitter. Now, everybody has different sensors for what is bitter, but bitterness is something that when you put in your mouth, you go, oh. Some people, to them, that's coffee. Some people, they'll take a sip of coffee and they're like, oh, that's bitter, that's gross. I like coffee. In fact, I love coffee. Something like somebody's saying, well, fireweed, eat the whole stalk of fireweed, it's really good for you. And I tried fireweed and it is super bitter, especially late in the fall. And it leaves that bitter taste in your mouth, and you want to do something. You spit it out, but that taste is still in your mouth. And so maybe you'll try to swish your mouth out with water. Once my sister she was taking this, it was called grape seed extract, and it's an oil. It is so incredibly bitter, and the only thing that will get that taste out of your mouth is swishing with milk. So I would swish with milk. Sometimes you can take and cut through bitterness with sugar. You add sugar to something and it actually is okay. But bitterness, this is bitterness in your mouth. And when we taste something that's bitter, our whole body often reacts. Our face contorts, and we often will spit it out, and we don't want anything to do with it. So that's bitterness in your mouth. But bitterness in your life, which is what we're talking about here in verse number 15, bitterness in your life or in your soul is when you allow the circumstances of life to leave you with a bitter taste in your heart. And just like it's hard to get rid of a bitter taste sometimes in your mouth, bitterness in your soul or in your heart is when there are unpleasant circumstances in life, and we let that bitterness stay in our hearts. Instead of dealing with it, we let it get in there. And unlike bitterness in your mouth, which will eventually kind of dissipate, when we allow bitterness to stay in our hearts, it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's kind of like a disease, and it just gets worse and worse. Some other words that we might describe bitterness with are resentment. Sometimes we will say we hold a grudge. You ever held a grudge against somebody?